Oh, hello, YouTube. Today in The Naughty Librarian, I am reviewing and recapping episode 1 of the Mayfair Witches, and I have high hopes for this series. I'll say that. I'm really trying to look at the series as objectively as possible because, yikes, did I really hate The Witching Hour, the book that this show is based on? It's real bad. I did not like it at all, so I'm trying to separate that in my head because the show is doing its own thing. It's wildly different from the plot of the book. That all being said, I watched episode 1 and I'll be honest, I wasn't overly impressed with it. It was kind of mediocre, I would say. I get what they're doing. I get it. I'm not stupid. I understand the metaphors they're putting out here. They're exploring patriarchy and misogyny through the lens of witches and women in power. And they even go so far as to show some women in the show as similar to real life that are so indoctrinated in the patriarchy that they do all they can to withhold the status quo rather than, act in their own best interest. They show all this. I get it. The metaphors are a bit on the nose. I get it. I don't think it was particularly done well. It didn't really make any new observations that we haven't seen hundreds of times before. We get it. It's not reinventing the wheel here. It's just kind of giving us the same observations again, but throwing a dash of magic in. However, I'm giving things the benefit of the doubt. So on to the episode here. It's basically told in 2 concurrent storylines. There's one for Deirdre and there's one for Rowan. So I'll just tell the Deirdre story in one lump sum and the Rowan story in one lump sum because frankly the show intercuts between the two so many times that it gets confusing about how long things are taking in the individual storylines. Honestly, I was about 3/4 through the episode when I finally figured out Rowan's storyline was probably over the course of a year. And not just a matter of a few weeks, because it was really unclear with all the jump cuts in between. So for clarity's sake, I'm just gonna tell them it's 2 different storylines, mind you, interspersed between each other all the time. Let's talk about Deirdre first. We open up the episode and there's this doctor doing a house call, right? And he comes up and there's this middle-aged woman sitting on the porch completely catatonic. And the doctor's like, this is weird. I thought I was meeting an elderly patient with the length of her medical file. And he's like, something is rotten in the state of New Orleans here. I think I'm gonna review the facts first before giving her more Thorazine. And just a side note to this, a production detail, this poor actress has the worst set of contacts I have ever seen. I get it, they're trying to make her eyes match Rowan's eyes, so they both have that shockingly blue eye thing, but wow, these are terrible contacts where there are no better contacts available. Yikes. Let's spend some of the production budget here. But anyways, back to this doctor, right? He's investigating. He's like, I'm gonna read the medical chart before I get into whether or not I'm gonna just keep loading this lady full of Thorazine. And they start the mystery. They're building all this spooky vibes. You got a creepy house, and then he hears footsteps. He sees a brief glimpse of a man through the window. And this is our first look at Lasher. Lasher is a very important part of the story. He's kind of a ghost demon spirit thing that is attached to the Mayfair since the first Mayfair witch. It's a whole thing. I'm sure the show is going to go into more of the mythology behind it, so I'm just going to leave it at that as our first glimpse of Lasher. So now that we've established the present state of Deirdre Mayfair, we flash back to her as a teenager. She's 17 and having a rough go of things. Mind you, she's 17, so that lends to a certain amount of angst already. But what makes Deirdre particularly special in her angst is that she's connected to a demon spirit thing called Lasher. And also, she's being raised by her aunts, who are the worst. We get our first meeting of Carlotta Mayfair, and she is the family Karen. The literal worst. And spoiler alert, in the present, she is the one making sure Deirdre stays this way. She is not a good person. She's not always necessarily wrong, but the way she goes about being right is just ghastly. It's alarming. But besides that, she's being raised by the family Karen. That's not great to start with. And also she's attached to a demon spirit thing who gets into a lot of mischief, and then by association gets Deirdre into a lot of mischief. And also she's in Catholic school, and all of these different things are all just combining to put Deirdre in the perfect place to be manipulated. And that's kind of Lasher's whole deal, right? He's like the world's best imaginary friend until he stops being the best and he starts being manipulative and awful, because basically Lasher's been manipulating this family since always to obtain his own goals and meet his own desires. Like I was saying, Deirdre's so easy to manipulate because she's isolated, and also she's low-key in love with Lasher, who is like a grown-ass man. He's a grown-ass man body person, and she's 17. Luckily, he's just like, no, you're a child. So like, one thing for Lasher in this instance, he's not like seducing a child. He's like, you're a kid, like we're not gonna fuck. And you might think that sounds weird considering he's a ghost, like how would they fuck? And I'm gonna tell you right now, they find ways to fuck, in the book at least. So just be aware, there's probably gonna be ghost banging this season. However, he does kind of push Deirdre into sneaking out of the house to go to a party over at her uncle Cortland's house. And like, Cortland is such like the grandiose, like a dandy of the room, where he's just like, oh, I'm gonna throw these lavish parties all the time and just live life like a libertine. That's very much Cortland. I just don't want to give spoilers, but I'll just say, like, never trust Cortland. Cortland's always up to some shit. You never want to trust him. He's a bad guy. Basically, he picks a dude. He has a lineup of guys show up and he needs to pick one for a job. And he picks one of them, and it's this guy named Patrick. Deirdre gets to the party. She's like in a lovely dress. She's like, it's her first big time out. You know, she's been isolated her whole life. So she's very kind of naive and just wanting to fit in and like have interactions with people. Again, prime pickings for manipulation. So after Deirdre gets to the party, same guy comes up to her right in front of like Cortland. It's the guy he picked for the job, and he's just like, hey, my friend dared me to ask you to dance. Want to dance? And Cortland's like, yeah, go dance. Here's a drink. Here's a drink that I made for you that you didn't pour yourself. Drink it. Go drink this drink and dance with this guy. Go dance with dude bro. And Lasher is also there like watching over everything with like a smirk. So I don't know if he and Cortland are like plotting. It wouldn't surprise me if they were, but like, you never trust Cortland. Never. Especially because things are getting really like hazy. They try to show it in the camera work. Things are hazy. Deirdre and Dude Bro end up having sex, and she's really not quite in her right mind, you know? I'm assuming this drink was drugged, and she is, you know, having sex with him, and then all of a sudden she's like finally focuses her eyes, and the person is wearing this crazy like mask and has gloves with like drag queen level nails on them. And I was like, who is she having sex with? So next morning comes around and Deirdre's alone. She's wondering where Dude Bro went, and then she looks out the window and they're carrying a body out. What kind of fucking party was this that they're carrying bodies out? Oh my word. And then also Carlotta has found out she snuck out and she's there to come get her. And like, Carlotta's the worst. So she's like, oh my gosh, I'm so fucked. And we're gonna have a little time jump. We're about, you know, 9 months or so later, and we find out Deirdre is way pregnant. And so she's really distraught and also, you know, super pregnant. So Carlotta brings over Father Duffy. He's a priest, because mind you, she's super Catholic. And so Deirdre's like talking to the priest. She's telling him how like Carlotta probably has something to do with Dude Bro's death, and Carlotta probably has something to do with her mother's death. And she begs the priest to like help her come get out of the house. Please help me, take me away from them. But instead of helping, he just offers to pray for her. And it's like, Father, like right now is not the time for thoughts and prayers, okay? Like Deirdre is literally begging you to rescue her. So anyway, he's kind of useless in this instance, so she kicks him the fuck out. And Deirdre at this point is finally just so trapped and alone and desperate to get away that she decides she's going to unalive herself. So she goes out on the balcony and she attempts to jump, and Lasher finally shows up and like telekinesis her back to the balcony so she doesn't fall. And he's like, come meet with me. And she's like, okay. So she goes and meets with Lasher in like the library. And he's like, hey, guess what? That pendant you're wearing like binds me to you. Like in the book, like the pendant isn't really all that important. But he's like, hey, but you're like old enough now that you can decide if you really want to be bound to me because you just inherited me. So like take it off. I'll show you my like powers and stuff. And then if like you're still cool with it, you can like choose to bind yourself to me and then like you're my witch. And she's like, okay. And so he starts showing his powers. Is basically mainly shape shifting. And oh boy, like I wish they put more money into the like graphics budget here because it's very uncanny valley. I don't know if that's on purpose or not. It just wasn't the best CGI I've ever seen in this instant. But after seeing all that, she's like, listen, you're the lesser of two evils here. I will do anything to get away from these fucking ants. I will definitely bind with a demon. So she puts the necklace back on. We're having this big resonating moment of the show where she chooses this. And then her water breaks, she goes into immediate labor. Like, I wish they let this moment sizzle for a minute because it was just like such an abrupt cut. It's like, no, let us have some resonance here. I want to see this moment grow, but we didn't get that. So Deirdre gives birth and Carlotta immediately takes the baby. And Deirdre's screaming, she's like, bring back the fucking baby, don't you dare take my baby, because like, same as in the book, Deirdre doesn't want to give up the baby. She wants to keep it, and Carlotta takes it from her and gives Rowan, baby Rowan, to Ellie immediately after she was born to be taken away to California. And Ellie MAYFAIR is like a distant cousin. She's not really closely related to the main MAYFAIR family, but she's a MAYFAIR and has her promise to keep. The MAYFAIR is a complete secret. Rowan is never to know who she really is because the whole thing Carlotta's doing here, she's trying to break the connection with Lasher from the family. And she thinks the only way to do this is like separation and like ignoring Lasher. Like, spoiler alert, it doesn't work that well. And we don't see this part in the show too much, but I'll just explain from the book that after Carlotta takes the baby away, Deirdre goes into like this deep depression and tries to unalive herself again. And Carlotta ends up committing her to like a series of asylums where basically whatever asylum she can get the doctors to force shock treatments onto her and Thorazine. And when the doctors start saying no, she just takes her out of this asylum and puts her in another one so she can have the cycle continue. Carlotta's the worst. And that kind of takes her up till now, where she's just living back in the MAYFAIR house with private doctors to come give her Thorazine. Here we are, back at the beginning of the episode. Deirdre is catatonic. And, like, I don't know. I feel like the show was trying to have this be a reveal. But, like, wasn't this obvious? Like, I feel like they're trying to say, Deirdre MAYFAIR to this woman who's catatonic. Like, we didn't know the teenage girl we were watching was and her were the same person. It seemed like it was supposed to be a reveal, but it was a very poorly done one. But anyways, this doctor, right? He knows something's off with this patient. So he's like, hey, Deirdre, guess what? We're going to have a little bit of a secret. I'm going to pretend I'm giving you Thorazine, but I'm really not going to give you Thorazine. I'm not going to give it to you tomorrow, but I'm going to keep coming every day pretending to give you Thorazine because I will think you don't actually need it. So like, doctor, kind of smart, like him a lot. And also, he takes off the pendant. And in the show, this pendant is a big deal, obviously. It like marks her connection to Lasher, her binding. So taking off the pendant unbinds him, apparently, and this allows Lasher to be on the loose a bit. And I'm not sure if this is on purpose or not. I don't know what Deirdre's plan is, because she's catatonic. But I don't know. It's really different from in the book, because Deirdre is dead. There's nothing to be done for Deirdre in the book. But in the show, I think they're doing a whole, like, hashtag justice for Deirdre, like, storyline, which I'm, like, for. Yes, justice for Deirdre. I'm here for it. All right, so that's a wrap on Deirdre. Let's talk about Rowan. She's out on her boat. She lives in San Francisco. Her adoptive mother, Ellie, comes over to like celebrate her adoption day. I guess it's also probably her birthday. And Rowan is like a really talented neurosurgeon. And she has really good instincts. And by that, I mean she has like a magical ability to diagnose and like heal patients magically by like touching them. She can like diagnose exactly what needs to be done to heal them. However, like I said, they're playing with misogyny and the patriarchy in this show. She's also a woman working in a generally male-dominated field, so she has to spend a fair amount of her day also dealing with small men and their very big egos. We see this repeatedly in her storyline. Also, I just want to point out a part because I like gasped because Rowan is commiserating with like her surgical nurse. They're like, oh wow, men are dicks in this field, la la la, the whole thing. But she quotes, "The slow blade penetrates the shield," you know, from Dune, which has been in the cultural zeitgeist for like a long time. And like Rowan and the nurse had no idea where that came from. And I'm like, it's from Dune! Anyway, I gasped just as a nerd. It's from Dune. But anyway, so Rowan, she's been like doing her job at the hospital trying to deal with small men with big egos. And she runs into her mother again, Ellie, and she's like, hey, what are you doing at the hospital? And Ellie's like, I had a screening and my cancer's back. So now Ellie has cancer again. And, you know, Rowan wants to save her as best she can. Mind you, she has this magical ability that she wants to save people, but like, I don't think she can heal cancer by touch. So she has to resort to science. So she has to go to like King Dick of the Ass Forest, Dr. Ketch. And she's like, listen, Dr. Lamley was viewing our surgery we did together. Could you put in a good word for me? Because he's doing like stem cell research and like clinical trials for cancer patients. I want to try to get my mother in. And like, all she wants is for like her colleague to say, hey, Rowan's good at stuff. It's like the bare minimum she could ask for. And Dr. Ketch can't just even do that. No, he needs to feel like a big man because he has such a tiny ego that he needs to like put Rowan in her place for being like a woman and daring to like talk back to him. So he's just basically like, I don't give a shit your mom has cancer, fuck off. And dick move, right? Really? You're gonna be a dick over a mom with cancer? Fuck you. And like, I think Rowan agrees because her magical abilities activate and she starts thinking about his like artery going into his brain a lot and his artery explodes and he dies. So she made his brain explode and kills him. That's like the other side of Rowan's magical ability. Yes, she can use it to heal and diagnose and stuff, but she could also use it to make brains explode, amongst other things. She can kill as well. But, you know, Rowan is a doctor. She's doing it to save lives, so the fact that she exploded a guy's brain doesn't sit well with her. She's like really distraught from it. She's talking to her mother. She's like telling her what happened. She's like, Mom, I made his brain explode. I know it. And Ellie doesn't believe her. Ellie's like, no, Rowan, you don't have magical powers. Like, what are you talking about? And like, Rowan's like, well, if I knew more about my genetics, maybe I would have like a reason why I think I can do these things. And like, Ellie's like, no, it's impossible to find that out. It's a closed adoption. It's just a whole like gaslighting of Rowan thing. Mind you, you know, Ellie was sworn to secrecy. And just to complete like the whole gaslighting thing, she's like, Rowan, go get me a milkshake. I always want a milkshake. I'm getting chemotherapy. I want a milkshake. So Rowan's like, fine. And so she leaves, and the second Rowan leaves, like Ellie, she calls up the Talamasca and she's like, Rowan's powers are changing. Go send someone to check on things. The Talamasca agent assigned to Rowan's case is named Cyprian Greaves, right? He is completely made up for the show, and he is an amalgamation of two main characters from the book. He is a mixture of Aaron and Michael. Now, Aaron Leiter was a Talamasca agent. He had psychic abilities, and he was an older man, and he was assigned to the MAYFAIR witches, like to observe and possibly create contact with them. That's his jam. Now, Michael, mind you, really a main character of the book because he's literally Rowan's main love interest and later husband. So they took like Aaron and Michael and made it a Cyprian baby, which is like really bizarre because like he even has Michael's like psychic ability where he has psychometry. He touches something and he can see the history of the object. And I don't know why they combined both of those characters into one character, but they did. Because right after, you know, Ellie calls to Talamasca, we meet Cyprian in the show, and he just goes to the MAYFAIR house, checks things out, touches the fence, and goes like, oh, there's creepy shit going on here. but he's just like, I don't know what's going on with Rowan because like things seem normal over here. Lasher still feels bound to the house. I don't know what to tell you. And so she's like, just keep an eye on it. And he's like, okay. And it was really weird they put Cyprian in the show at all because they did nothing with his character besides just like us for meeting him for maybe a whole minute's worth of screen time. I wish they like held off Cyprian until the next episode, but oh well, they put him in. But anyway, back to Rowan, right? Rowan, time has gone by since Dr. Ketch's brain exploded. And she did get her research fellowship with Lamley, who is the research guy. And immediately when you meet him, everything about this guy is creepy. Like, he's such a creep. Like, yikes. Like, girl, don't be alone with him. Like, the actor is doing such an amazing job of being immediately creepy. So, good for him, but I'm, like, sorry for him at the same time, because he's a little too good at this. But yikes, he's just immediately awful. Basically, he's like, okay, Rowan, you know what? You have a killer instinct in you, I can tell. Here's what we're going to do. If you want your mom in the trial, that's cool with me, but you have to kick someone else out of the trial. The cancer patient trial. Here, go kill someone else so your mom can live. And Rowan's like, are you fucking kidding me? No, go fuck yourself, sir. And she gives him, like, the man-child smackdown he so desperately needed. And honestly, it is a great fucking rant. It's like everything that you've ever wanted to say to a disgusting dude. And Rowan just like lays into him, and it's like top notch. It's a top notch rant. I love that scene. And Rowan owns this guy so hard that she ends up killing him the same way as the doctor. His brain explodes too. It's like, oh my gosh, she owned him so hard he died. Ah! So for me, like, it was a fun moment. Am I a villain? I don't know. I like the scene a lot. I don't know what that says about me as a human. But for Rowan though, Rowan's very distraught by this. She thinks, she's a monster. She's making people's brains explode. Like, this goes against everything she has as a human, empathy and being a doctor and saving lives. Exploding brains is not part of that. So she feels like she's a monster. She's distraught. She comes back to Ellie again saying, Ellie, it happened again. I don't know what I'm going to do. And Ellie just keeps telling her, you don't have powers. You don't have powers. You don't have powers. It's all in your head. And like, I don't think like keeping the truth from Rowan on this point, or like gaslighting her into thinking she doesn't have powers, is going to fix it. It's just going to make the body count get higher. I think you probably should just acknowledge, like, yeah, maybe you have a power, but like, you need to control it. I think would have been the better approach here, but whatever. I'm not in the show. But Ellie's cancer is terminal. She's dying. And the episode at this point is cutting back and forth between showing Rowan's birth and juxtaposing it with Ellie's death. So I get what they're doing here. It's like a poetic resonance that they're doing. And fairly well, actually, I would say. There's this one like scene they put in here where Ellie's getting the baby from Carlotta. This is their first meeting ever, and like little baby Rowan holds like Ellie's finger, as babies do. And then you cut back to the present where this is their last time together and Ellie's dying and Rowan's like holding her finger. And like, oh, it's like getting me right now. It was like strangely emotional. Like the poetic resonance of those two scenes juxtaposed with each other was really good. So I hope like that like storytelling continues in the rest of the season, because like that's really good. It has potential. But Ellie, she does pass away. Rowan is heartbroken. She feels lost. Next we see her, she's on her boat in the middle of the ocean during a storm, like really setting the mood with this, and she's just lost. She's depressed. And she hears something. So she goes and looks out the window onto her deck of her boat, and we just get a brief flash of Lasher there. And then boom, credits, cuts right there. Great tension building. So like I was saying, this show has potential. There's some great storytelling elements in here with the resonance scenes and then like the cut at the end to build that tension for next week. Love that. However, a lot of it is just a little mediocre. So I'm hoping the future episodes are going to get better and better, because this one has potential. There you go. But yeah, it was basically two concurrent storylines for meeting mother and daughter. And the show is going to be wildly different from the book. And that's about it. Yeah, so anyway, that was episode 1 of the Mayfair Witches. I will be back next week with episode 2. Again, hoping for it to get better. Fingers crossed. Let me know in the comments down below, what did you think about it? Are you a fan of the Mayfair Witches series? How do you think it compares to Interview with the Vampire? I don't know. Let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. If you like this video, make sure you give it a like, and if you want to see more videos, make sure you subscribe, and also if you want cool exclusive content, including early access to videos, as well as a book club, you can consider becoming a channel member or a patron. Links for that are in the description down below. And on that note, I will see you guys soon. Goodbye!